Got it.
Okay, so the recording is on.
Right, okay. Cool. Okay, so, well, my name's Sarah Monk. I make a podcast called Materially Speaking, where artists tell their stories through the materials they choose. And I've done about 30 episodes in Pietrasanta in northern Italy, where people work mainly with stone. And at the moment, I'm working on a short series in Venice of artisans working in various materials there. And I'm doing a collaboration with On-Form Sculpture Garden in Oxfordshire. And it's my great pleasure to be here with my friends Monica Major and Isabel Langtree. And I'm going to quickly introduce them. And then we're going to have a little chat about something, about public art, in fact, which is the subject we've chosen for this year's International Sculpture Day conversation. So first, let me introduce Monica Major. Hi, Monica.
Hi, Sarah.
Monica is a stone sculptor from southern Germany, and she apprenticed in a small sandstone quarry, graduated as a stonemason in 1995, receiving the honor of being Germany's best. Since 2000, she's been a freelance sculptor and has also completed training as a designer of craft and expressive art therapy. Flow, softness, movement are the essence of her sculptures, which are made mainly of various German limestone and created for private and public spaces.
Thank
you. And Isabel, hi Isabel.
Hello.
Isabel Langtree is a sculptor and principal of the Hampstead School of Art in London. She graduated from St. Martin's School of Art with an MA in pure sculpture, and she works in bronze, steel, stone, wood, clay, and mixed media, and has a series of sculptures permanently sited in public spaces in Chile, Spain, Slovenia, Saudi Arabia, and the UK. So she makes abstract sculptures whose shapes take on living qualities, and people often want to touch or hug them. And in fact, she has said often that her work invites physical interaction. So that's a very good intro to talking about public art. And just to get the conversation going, I was going to ask if we maybe address a question. So Monica, perhaps I could ask the question to you first, which is, can you tell us about a piece of public art that you find special and why you like it? Tell us why you like it.
Well, for me, that was one huge stone sculpture that I saw by chance many years ago in southern Germany on a sculpture path. It is made by the Norwegian sculptor Marit Lykander. I don't know if I pronounced it right, but that really moved me because it was a sculpture to dive in and really experience the artwork and myself. And so just to give you briefly like a picture that you can imagine it, how that looks like. You imagine two big limestones about 4 meters high, and they are standing very close together, like 2 centimeters apart. And on one side, there is, you see a hole in the shape of a human silhouette, and you can enter the stone through this. And if you enter, you find yourself in a inner space, and in the inner space there are like imprints of a human body molded in the stone. And I think it was women shapes that were imprinted, so I can remember myself leaning into there. And then the most impressing experience then was when I was in there in this inner space. I remembered that I myself did once a humming stone for a sanctuary garden. And I started to try with my own voice in this space. And that was really unbelievable, because with my voice, there was such a resonating space in there. And I just could feel this on my whole body. And that was, I will never forget this experience. That was really special for me. And it was so unexpected. I didn't expect to see a sculpture, and I didn't expect to make such a impressing experience. So that, yeah.
So did you, when you hummed, did you sort of feel it as well as hear a noise? What was the experience really?
Well, the humming is that every human has an own tone. Like for me, maybe it's like maybe for you it would be or So you have to try a little bit if you're in that space. When does it start? When you start to feel the vibration in your body. So the vibration goes into, it's the water in our bodies that is transporting the vibration. And so you can feel it like in all your cells. And it's really incredible. And everybody has an own tone. So you have to play a little bit to find it. And then you have like a crazy impact. Yeah.
Bit like a meditation, choosing a note.
Yeah, it was.
What scale is it, Monica?
It was the stones maybe 4 meters high, and then there was this little space inside what the shape of the human probably, so you can go inside there like I could 1.70 meters, and inside it was not so big, so maybe 2 people could go in there. I didn't try, I was alone. It was not so much space inside, so quite little.
Lovely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it was dark. Is it dark inside?
No, there was light coming in. Yeah, but it felt very covered and like a safe space inside. Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah.
That sounds wonderful. And Isabel, can I ask you to tell us about a piece that you find special and why?
Well, when I first came to London, I love nature, as you know. It's very inspiring to me, as it is to many of us. I walked on Hampstead Heath and I visited Kenwood House, and I was a very young student, a very young sculptor, and I came across Henry Moore's 2-piece reclining figure, which is just outside Kenwood House. And it's not one of Henry Moore's biggest pieces. So it's not one of those things that makes you feel small, like the ancient Egyptians might have, did create those huge sphinxes and public sculptures of their pharaohs that make you feel so tiny. And Henry Moore's piece is really quite a very accessible scale. So this particular piece is in 2 parts. And I used to go, and I still do actually, because as it coincidentally happens and very happily to me, the main founder of my art school, of Hampstead School of Art, was Henry Moore. So Henry Moore was a local sculptor in Hampstead and worked relatively close by to here. So my links to Henry Moore have become, even more attached really. So I still go to Hampstead Heath and I still go and look at the sculpture. And I observed it, I photographed it many, many hundreds of times in very different light conditions and weather conditions. And every time I go to that sculpture, there is some sort of public interaction with it. And when I was a young sculptor, I just thought, well, that's what sculpture should do. Sculpture should talk to people and not intimidate them, not make them feel small, but actually engage them in a way. And although the bronze isn't a material that you can find in Hampstead Heath naturally, It's a material that becomes very sympathetic, and it responds to the atmosphere. So you do get a very particular patination with bronze, depending where it is. I have a large bronze in Mallorca, in the Tramontana Mountains, and the patination there is quite extraordinary, because on one side it's being hit by a very saline condition coming off the sea, and on the other side it's hit by the forest air. So on one side we have a verdigris patination developing, and every year that patination becomes more and more developed. And on the other side of the sculpture, which is a side facing the mountains, the Tramontana Mountains, it's a much more kind of golden color. So I noticed that about the Henry Moore sculpture, and over time, that deepens. The patination on that Henry Moore sculpture deepens. So I have become very fond of bronze for that reason, because it's very, very hardy. We know that bronzes from the ancient Greeks have lasted, thousands of years, and it's very hardy. It's very resistant. So whenever I went to visit two-piece reclining figure, and there'd either be a child climbing up it, or people leaving their clothes on it, or having a picnic on it, or I've seen children throw snowballs at it. I just think it becomes part of your environment, and for a sculpture to be part of your environment means that it's almost you're having a conversation with it. You're having a conversation about where it is, about the conditions that you're living in with that sculpture, the weather. The patination, if you observe it, changes all the time, and so that absolutely delights me about that material. I have worked with other materials that do similar things. Stone can, depending on the stone, can take on similar qualities, and I do love working with stone from the natural area where you're making a public sculpture, because I think that resonates in people's biology, in your very genes, that you can feel the materials that you've grown up with and that you live with. And there's something very special about making work with clay. When I was a student at St. Martin's, there was a very big building being built very, very close to the school in Charing Cross Road. And I could see as the diggers went in there that there was clay at the bottom of that hole. And so I took a truck along one day, little cart, and I asked if I could extract some of that clay. And it was very strange stuff. It was very black, viscous kind of clay, probably highly polluted. I have no idea, but I took some back to the art school and worked with it and fired it. And it was remarkably like London stuff, London stuff talking to me. It was just fantastic experience. So those materials, those materials that can really talk to you are important to me. So what do we want public sculpture to do? I want public sculpture to have a sense of its place, if possible, to have a sense of the people, to work making a public sculpture and have people come to visit you while you're making it. Puts you in a very interesting position, because I've been on sites where people will say, oh, I never really understood what the role of the artist was. I never understood how you did this. And once people understand it, there's a kind of a new respect, goes on for that work. And I have heard other sculptors say that the sculptures that they have made that have come interactions with people have not been vandalized, because people make an association with it. When they've seen you work with it, how hard it is actually to work with something like stone, then people feel like it's family. And, to feel that it's family is just great.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's wonderful. And I love what you're saying about the aliveness, that the interaction, but also when you started and you said that you photographed it, and as though it's like different every time, as nature is, that, in
that sense, our public sculptures and all of us public sculptors, I think, feel the same, that it does become integrated in that site. Many sculptors work in different ways, of course. Anish Kapoor's piece, in Chicago, the Bean, that they now call it, reflects everything around it, and that's a very different kind of interaction. My sculpture tends to be very organic and flow with the area around it. But I think that the selection of public sculpture is a very interesting process in itself. The way that Rachel Whiteread's house, the cast house in the East End of London, was the most visited sculpture of its time, and yet was demolished by the local council the year after. This shows an extraordinary incompetence to understand how loved, these things can be, even when they seem to be very abstract. People make associations with the physicality of the material and the meaning of the shape, which is what Rachel Whiteread's work did.
Wonderful. Well, yeah, I had a slightly different angle actually for the piece that I because I do respond emotionally to sculptures for sure, but I am a bit of a history fiend. So I was going to mention that for me, one of the things that I like is discovering, again, about place, discovering something about a place, but more on the historical side, where you go to a village and you think, oh, something happened here, or there's a figurative piece. I wonder who it is that's famous, or they think's famous here. I always find that really interesting. And the one piece I was going to mention, it's up in the hills above Pietrasanta, actually, and it's a sculpture of Ferruccio Bresciani. And after the war, there was a lot of unemployment here, a lot of people, young men out of work. And this artisan, Ferruccio Bresciani, he took 25 of them under his wing. He gave them all a hiking stick. They went hiking at weekends. He gave them all a musical instrument. So there is still a choir, Capezzane Monti choir, or Coro Versilia, so they had various aspects that he gave them in nurturing them. But the main thing is that he trained them to be artisans. And of the 25, 20 worked their whole lives as artisans. Indeed, wow. For Henry Moore and for Lipchitz and for all the people who came here in the 60s and beyond and wanted to realize works in marble that they couldn't do. There was a big sea change here from marble being used for memorials and for church work into creating art. Anyway, it's a very nice story because it was some of the remaining artisans who wanted to honor him and did the work, creating the piece, sort of honoring their teacher. And I find that sort of story, it's a story. I like stories. I'm a storyteller. And so I guess I always love it when there's that sort of story as in a piece, a bit of history, a bit of a story.
Oh, lovely. That's a great story to tell. And of course, that's a very different kind of public sculpture, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, and public sculpture has actually transformed, hasn't it, over many years? When the Russians the old USSR used to create a sculpture, it was for infiltrating people's minds. It was for bringing you over, to their side. And actually, I think, because I tend to work in a simplified, abstracted way, I find that engages people in a very, very different way. So when we're talking about a kind of an organic response, to a material and to a shape, that's where I'm trying to come to. And I think, Monica, you do a very similar thing because, your recent series of the barges are a diverse series of organic forms. I realize they come from a certain inspiration, but when I reviewed all of your work, I thought that each one of them had a very, very particular kind of characteristic about it. And that's a very hard thing to achieve. And I, absolutely congratulate you on having achieved that.
Thank you. Yeah.
And I'm very proud to say that I own one. It's currently in my studio. And I am studying it, Monica.
Really?
Very inspiring.
I'm really happy about that. Yeah.
I shall post about it because it's very different to the piece that it's next to in my studio, but somehow they have a conversation. Yeah. And that's very exciting when two pieces of work have a conversation, and you must come and visit.
Yes, I definitely. I know.
Yeah. Well, it does go back. And, Monica, you set up this group, online, and we've become friends online. And I think that's one of the wonderful things that has come out of the rather strange couple of years that we've had.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But we definitely should have a live talk together, not offline.
Yeah, that would be nice. Drink may be involved. So then, why don't we swing back again to you, Monica, for a second sort of topic, which is, going back to what you said about giving, what's the most important gift you can give people in creating a piece of public art?
Well, I think that this question is just wonderful because it shows like this, what you said, Isabel, what sculpture used to be and what the future of sculpture might be. And I hope to be the future for sculpture, more to be a gift to people. And especially sculpture in the public space, I think it's really relevant because often you see it by chance and it's something like a really unexpected surprise. And so this is the gift, I think, it's to create an unexpected surprise on special public places where you know that people are around. And if I see what my sculptures evoke, or if I just look at the feedback that I get on them, so it's about the calmness that they give. So this is definitely something I think I could give with the sculptures. And I think it's needed because we are so fast running society and people are running so fast. So this is definitely one. And the other thing is like the moving thing and the playfulness. So this is also something what I think is really powerful to receive, even unconsciously. It's nothing that I think you have to go and look at the public sculpture consciously. I think it can also work unconsciously, and so it's both parts. Yeah, and for me, the stone is also relevant as a material because, besides the form, I think the stone is supporting the form, and for me, it's still, I don't know if my lifetime is enough to understand stone, probably not, but it's so old and it has such a relevance around our planet, and it has such different stories of origin. So this is really fascinating for me, that and the millions of years that it's carrying, and the one is with the power of water because it's spilled in the sea, like the limestone has its origin in the sea, and then you have the volcanic stones, and you have all the metamorphosis that the material is going through. So it's really, for me, it has a bearing power, and I really think that you can feel that even if you don't think about it. But it
is fascinating, that idea that the material that is so ancient, and yet you, very much like Noguchi, make it very, very modern, and Noguchi's forms are so ancient, and yet his forms are so modern, and it is such a flexible and giving material, isn't it? I mean, I love it as well.
Yeah. And it has a lot to do with being connected also for me. Maybe this is what you said, like, Isabel, when you talked about Henry Moore's sculpture, it's almost like a companion, that is always there. If you are in London, it's always there, and you can always go and visit it, and it's like it has an influence to you and the place where you are. And this is also maybe with where I live here is the limestone. So if I go for a walk, I see these big rocks. So this has an influence on me, and it's also like a connection to that. And the connection is there coming up. You have the connection to form and to material. And so it's both. And
Yeah, I think that's a lovely thought too, because people do talk about trees and, being in that feeling that one gets walking in close proximity with trees. But it's the same, as you say, with stone, that you sort of think, gosh, and there's something I find very calming about the longevity, that they were here for a long time. And in these days when there's so many things going on that are troubling, the fact that, they will be there a long time as well. And there's a sort of a nice feeling of continuity, I think.
And I think the addition with stonework, the addition of the craft element, I mean, for me, is absolutely delightful. And I'm very much still learning, as Monica says, probably for the rest of my life, about stone. But I am fascinated and intrigued and delighted by the ancient craft of stone. Given that I absolutely love huge machines as well. Oh, absolutely. I absolutely love the big machines. I love the trucks. I love everything about large scale stonework. It's just, my knees just shake with excitement when I see a 50-ton truck coming by.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, I did not know that about you.
But to watch Monica do everything by hand, is just absolutely delightful for me. I love it. So that combination of the ancient, the modern interpretation of your form, married with the craft. I mean, it's just like a dessert, isn't it, that you want to eat? The whole thing is a recipe, the most delightful and delicious recipe. I love it. It's wonderful.
So what would you like to tell us about, Isabel, by the way of a gift you would give? Not a dessert, but what do you think is an important gift you can give people when you create a piece of public art?
Well, it is that sense of being part of it, So when you visit an art gallery, there is a distance, there's a certain distance between you, the visitor, and the artifact, and artifacts are so often displayed in this very, very precious way that it's untouchable. You're not allowed to touch them. You have to observe. It's quite a cold experience in many ways. But what I love about public sculpture, and particularly modern public sculpture, and I love the abstract. I absolutely love it, because you bring with it your own association. You bring with it whatever you want to read in it, and there's no right and there's no wrong. There's only self-expression and creativity, and that is everything, because we so need that. We so need to be creative and engage with each other and be honest about our feelings, and it's terribly exciting. So for me, the best thing about it is that people associate a sense of belonging, that you can latch some part of yourself to public sculpture is everything to me. And I think the last time we spoke, I did talk about how the public sculptures in London that I get the chance to see very, very regularly become like furniture. But I've also seen people tell others off for leaving their coat hanging on one of my sculptures, or for saying to a child, you shouldn't be hanging off that sculpture. And so people become quite defensive about it, which is really sweet. It's like they want to protect it. And
that's very nice. It's their friend.
Exactly. It's just great.
Wonderful. Well, the piece that I was going to talk about by way of a gift, again, is historical. I don't know why we've got this theme going on, but I've been talking with Nilda Comas, a Puerto Rican-born American sculptor over here in Italy, where she works. And she is doing an amazing commission, which will be inaugurated in July, we hope. It's had quite a lot of delays, but this will be the first state-sponsored, i.e. Florida are having it representing the state of Florida in Washington, the first state-sponsored African-American statue to go into the National Hall of Statuary Fame in Washington. So I don't know if you know, but each state has 2 statues in there. and sometimes they review them. And Florida decided they didn't want a Confederate general in there, so he was out. So then it was who was in. Anyway, Mary Bethune is going to be in there, and she was an educator. She was the 17th child, I think, of a slave. She was the first born out of slavery. And she was the most amazing person. She set up a school that is now a university. And she was part of what is loosely called Roosevelt's Black Cabinet. So she would have tea parties on a Friday, and all of the heads of the African-American unions would come to her with their requests of things that they wanted listened to by Roosevelt. And she spoke with Roosevelt about 11 times a week, a month, I think it might be actually, but very frequently visiting him, and very close friends, and with Eleanor and himself. And I just wanted to say that the gift that she is giving, it's not a political story. It's that when the piece was unveiled over here, a community of people who had supported the project came over, including a number of African Americans, and I talked to them about what it meant to them. And one of them, a lady about my age, very nice person who became a friend, she said, what it means to me is that no longer will that little girl that I was feel not included. Oh. And I thought, and then actually some of the students said similar things, like to see her there means I'm okay, and that gift is it's just one I hadn't really thought about. And somebody else said, one of the other young men said that she did so much in her life, but the fact that she has a statue in there is going to be her final bit of legacy. The very fact that there is a statue of her in there is yet another gift to them.
That's lovely. Again, it's about association, isn't it? It's about belonging, and it's about inclusion, and we all need that. We all need to feel wanted.
And also a friend, it's that embodiment of something that. So there we go.
We're on a similar mindset, aren't we?
We are in the similar mindset.
And it's about people, and it's about community.
Yeah, and connection and belonging. I think that's really, important things. Yeah.
It does seem that that's the theme, funnily enough, although we've all come from different points. Yes. It's not just the connection. Last time we talked about touch, and it's not that that's not important, but I do think it's interesting that belonging is important when we're all, very aware, I think, aren't we still, of community, the value of community and borders and all sorts of things. So what a wonderful contribution sculpture makes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Monica and Isabel. And anybody listening who wants to reach out to us, you can find us on social media. We're all up there on Instagram, easily found. And we just want to thank you all and wish you a happy International Sculpture Day.
Yeah.
Happy International Sculpture Day.
Happy International Sculpture Day. And thank you so much for the talk. Very inspiring.